dropped its first 3 episodes on HBO this past week. Tokyo Vice. And dog, I was looking forward to this one. I definitely think there's some things to talk about in terms of, I think there's some critiques of the show that are warranted, and
Hmm.
also I think that maybe it doesn't have to take away from everything about the show, but overall, I mean, I think the catch of Michael Mann is directing the first episode of this is really enticing, right? Because you just
Yeah.
know, okay, they're calling in the big guns for this, and it's based off a book of the same name by Jake Adelstein. So I think the book was a bestseller. So I think we
Yeah.
know that the source material is really good. Got Ansel Elgort at the helm, which is a little bit unfortunate, given his
Yep.
personal life issues. But overall, I gotta say, like, I really enjoy these first 3 episodes. I'm totally in on the show. And I think you can take it for what it is, but also kind of recognize that maybe there's some flaws to the creation of it. What was your overall experience with the first 3 episodes?
Yeah, I'm totally digging it as well. There's plenty of reservations people can have about it, but I think it's very well done, super compelling. I can't wait to see more. I think Michael Mann does a really good job with the pilot just because he immediately inserts his visual language that we associate with his filmmaking in terms of very specific close ups. Looks awesome. Just great to see Michael Mann back. He hasn't really done a whole lot since Black Hat came out in like 2015, I think it was. It's been a while. To get this, I think he definitely put his stamp on it in a nice way. And yeah, you might be thinking it's like, oh well, story set in Tokyo, main protagonist is a white guy. Do we really need the guy Jin perspective going through uh Asia, the audience avatar for white people watching this show? And it's like, you know what, you're right. There's probably a better version of this show that's just completely Japanese, to be
Yeah.
honest. That's probably completely true. However, I think it's at least acceptable because, as you said, this is based on Jake Adelstein's memoir, where he really did become the first foreign reporter at one of the biggest newspapers in Tokyo in the 90s. And he did, in fact, in real life, become very embroiled with his reporting on the Yakuza and organized crime in Japan. So this is ultimately based in reality. So I think it's okay that, yes, you're seeing a white perspective, in this foreign world. I think they're doing enough work to show other perspectives, other characters, such as Sato, who's like the kind of rising Yakuza figure, the young man
Yeah.
there. They're giving you other perspectives that's not just how everybody bounces off Jake and his foreign perspective. I think they're doing enough work to make it at least a little bit more than just white guy goes to Japan.
Yeah, I agree. I actually think the work that they do with um, Hideki Ito as the detective, Detective Jin Miyamoto. I
Hmm.
probably butchered that last name. Um, yeah, I think he kind of builds out the perspective of like that grimy underbelly of like the inner workings of the like exchange of information
Yeah,
and just kind of like the game of it all.
right.
Everybody
Just a
can be
straight up
bought.
vice detective. Everyone can
Um,
be bought. Yeah, of
and then you kind of get Ken Watanabe, who's a little different,
course.
right? He had
Legend.
and just amazing. Like the presence he brings in every scene is just incredible. But he brings a little bit of a different perspective to it.
Mm.
Obviously, you mentioned what they were doing with
Sato.
sorry, yeah, Sato. Thank you. But then also his boss at the newspaper. You see some scenes
Yes.
of her at home in
Emi.
in the third episode, and I just think like the way that they kind of show the perspective of all the different people within this culture and how they are all kind of part of this game and this like
Right.
overall like ruse from the government to like kind of keep things quiet and like
Right.
there aren't murders in Japan. It's always
Mhm.
something else. They're never charged for this. Like
Right.
very like interesting, and I agree with you that they build it out more. But I do think it's a fair criticism, and I agree with your take. If this was all Japanese or maybe made all by all Japanese creators, it'd probably be brilliant as well. So I think both can probably be good projects.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah, I really like Hiroto, Kanwanabe's character. I really like how, as you said, he kind of brings it in. It's like you can't get rid of the Yakuza, so you just have to keep the peace. So
Yep.
that means you have to make certain decisions about how you police them. Very interesting. And now we're obviously seeing this tension being built up of these various Yakuza factions beginning to leading up to open conflict against each other, how that affects everyone else. It's really interesting. It's really cool. I think the show looks awesome. Like we're spending a lot of time in Shinjuku. I think like just those streets just look awesome. Like I said, we already have Michael Mann's style kind of transposed on how they're making this show. So it's really cool. It is funny to see Elgort's presence throughout the show, just because Ansel Elgort is like 6'3", I think 6'2", 6'3". He's a big guy as far as actors go. So they have to kind of almost hide him in the frame a lot of the time, and it doesn't actually they don't actually make it look like he's towering over people all the time, because he's hunched over at his desk, or he's sitting at the bar with his friends that he's made at the paper and stuff like that. I think they're doing an interesting way of portraying him. I'm curious to see how Rachel Keller's character Samantha, who is a hostess, you know, figure, interested to see how she factors in. She's another white expat in the city, and I hope we just don't kind of sideline like Sato, for example, for other white perspective, because I feel like you can kind of see where Sam's plot is going. They did a very clear showing of her hiding rolled up money in a cabinet, and it's like, have a feeling someone's going to take that from you because you don't use
Yep.
the bank. Don't know
Yep.
why I feel that way. I've just probably seen things once or twice. Uh, but overall, I'm pretty happy with it, man. Going in knowing it stars Ansel Elgort, you have reservations about whether he's just going to tank the whole thing. But
Mhm.
I honestly think he's acquitting himself well. To his credit, he's speaking a lot of Japanese. He had to learn Japanese for this role. That is impressive. No matter obviously we don't know how well he's actually speaking it, but I think that still I think goes a long way in terms of making the series feel authentic.
Oh, totally. I give him a ton of credit. I actually think, one of the big critiques of him as an actor is that he's not super expressive, maybe a
Mm,
little bit too like within himself sometimes. I think he does a pretty good job in this of being
yeah,
expressive, especially because like you said, you there are subtitles. Most of this is in Japanese. It goes kind of flips between Japanese and English a lot. So he kind of has to be expressive, I think, to get across some of what he's feeling, and what's going on in the scene. And I think he does a really good job. And it's been nice to kind of see him. And I'm looking forward to his relationship with Ken Watanabe's Hiroto, just kind
yeah,
of developing and seeing how it gets to where you see them being confronted with like the head of the yakuza at the beginning of the show. Like that was a
right.
super tense scene to start it off. Thought that was great.
hmm
Any like moments from the show or any like scenes that really stick with you?
Yeah, well, I just think seeing Yakuza in general is always fun, just because they're a different sort of mafia. They have their own customs. They're not like the Italian mob, for example, that we obviously see all the time in American culture. So just being around the Yakuza and seeing their customs and seeing how someone like Sato can rise up, but how he goes about that is probably different than what we expect from seeing other organized crime on TV before. Just really nice to be with them, and I feel like the scene where Jake goes on the raid with Hiroto, and they basically arrest three guys that volunteer themselves up, and that's the punishment on this faction for the earlier incident at the bar.
Yep.
When that guy goes face to face with Hiroto, and he's like, "This is very irregular, taking arresting more of my guys," and Hiroto like just shouts him down basically with his icy stare. It's like, wow, that was sick. And you could
Yep.
I really like how Elgort plays it too. You can like barely wipe the smile off his face that he's having this experience. He's actually like succeeding in his job by happenstance more than anything else. That's really cool. But the guy who like steps up to Hiroto that guy just has a look about him, man. Like the slicked back hair and stuff,
Yep.
and like this stern face. I was like, we're gonna see him again. I can't wait. Can't wait for that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's so much like stylistically about the show that I think really stands out. But in terms of the scenes that really stick with me, I think Rachel Keller's introduction to the show, where she's doing
Mm,
karaoke, is a really standout moment for me. Just and also great to see Rachel Keller,
yeah,
in another great show again since Legion. I think she really stood out as Sid in that, and
right, of
just
course.
seeing her get another look is cool. I really loved when Jake and Soto or Sato have the moment where they have a conversation in the club. I thought that was super tense and like, but just like done so well. Yeah, just really love that. And I think like all the stuff you get with Sato and like kind of learning about his backstory as this
Right,
fisherman who was kind of plucked off the docks, seeing that he has this like problem with anger where he can kind of like snap and lose it,
right.
and seeing that play out as he's like challenged within the Yakuza, and then he has to kind of like uh, take a punishment for losing it and almost beating that guy to death. I found that all to be really, really
Hmm.
uh, interesting and cool to
Right.
watch. So
I really enjoyed the visual storytelling in the first episode. Again, Man's just part of it because I thought there was a really subtle way of like immediately knowing exactly where you are because you see Jake on, I believe it was the bus, maybe it was the train. He's reading some books and like, oh, we're in the late '90s Japan. This is after like the economic collapse in the lost decade, basically right after the period that's about to happen in the present day sequences in pachinko. For example, like I love how they immediately put you there, but also we're still in a pre uh, mainstream internet, pre smartphone time, and
mhm,
and that it's just more fun to be in that kind of world for this kind of story. You know,
yeah,
I love the newsroom. Being in an old
hmm,
school cracking newsroom with hundreds of people, it's great. It's so great, and just seeing Jake and his
Walkman.
friends he's made
Oh,
as
sorry.
fellow like rookies. I
Oh yeah,
I really enjoy all their energy and their kind of shared struggle, as it were.
yeah. I also like the time frame of it because you mentioned I think a lot of great points, but I really like the Walkman aspect of it and how he's
Mm.
like kind of walking around not only listening to music but also listening to these voicemails or I guess messages his sister sends
Yeah,
him, and like
tapes.
kind of building out his world that way. I think is really really fun and just kind of cool to like reminisce about that time period in general. But yeah, I mean, I'm loving Tokyo Vice so far. I can't wait to keep up with it as we go along. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, just in research, they tried to make this into a film uh, relatively recently that didn't go anywhere, and they had cast Daniel Radcliffe as Jake Adelstein. That would have been an interesting portrayal. I think he could have pulled it off, honestly.
Yeah,
You know,
probably.
but definitely a different kind of actor than Ansel is for
Oh,
sure.
totally. I wonder which one the actual Jake would prefer or is more like.
It's a
So
great question.